Another big story of the day, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis officially announcing his 2024 presidential campaign in a glitchy Twitter Spaces live stream with Elon Musk. A first for the app, and it definitely didn't go as planned. Joining us now on this, Yahoo Finance senior columnist Rick Newman and tech reporter Dan Halley. Rick, we could probably go another 15 minutes with you on the debt ceiling, but we've got you on something different today. I actually want to start with you, Dan, on just sort of the technology or lack thereof behind this. I mean, there's been so much talk about how many people Twitter has laid off and the effect it could have. Is that what this had to do with here?
It's hard to say, but woof, this is just a bad look for the technology side of things here. I mean, my God, there's supposed to be a marquee event basically showing off Twitter Spaces and kind of Elon Musk's say, look, I've taken over this company. I've, transformed it in my way. And this is the coming out party. And it was, anything but. I've been reading different reports where, the maximum number of people on the Twitter Spaces were between 500 and 600,000. By the time everything came back, they were on David Sack's account. They were at maybe between 250 and 300,000. So dropping half of the people who originally were tuning in. It took a half hour to get everything back to normal. Or at least get going. Elon Musk has said that his account was part of the problem because he has, more than 100 million followers, and then the thousands that were tuning in that somehow compounded to strain the servers. I think at one point they said the servers are melting. I mean, maybe that's the case, but it's not as though we haven't had streaming or live events streamed on the internet before. I mean, the Super Bowl was streamed on the internet. People stream. I was reading there were like 12 million people streaming a Travis Scott concert in Fortnite. So, it's not as though these kinds of things don't happen and don't happen without these kinds of glitches. I mean, it's hard to say whether or not this is actually the reason that Elon Musk put forward or because he cut the workforce to basically no one and had to close down servers. And people have been talking about instability at Twitter as far as the product goes. So, it could just be that, or maybe it is what Elon says. But I mean, it's just terrible look overall.
All right, Rick, I want to bring you into this. Glitches aside, they did finally get it going. I was on for the glitch fest, if you will, for the first half. That, as Dan mentioned, took up some considerable amount of time. But once they got going on Sack's Space, on David Sack's Space, DeSantis jumped into things that he would talk about in his platform. And I want to just see what stood out to you in terms of what he mentioned. And also, I just want to make a note that it's clear that although Musk said afterwards he'd be willing to have any presidential candidate, certainly giving DeSantis a platform to speak to right-wing influencers, et cetera. What's your take on what he said?
So about 25 minutes into the event, DeSantis finally got a chance to speak. And he gave what basically sounded like kind of a canned stump speech. I mean, he talks about what he has accomplished in Florida. And what he is trying to do is he is trying to be Trump without Trump, or Trumpism without Trump. So he did not mention Trump, and he has really barely mentioned Trump at all. Even when asked about Trump, he almost never even says the name. But what he's trying to do is say he is a true conservative without all the drama that surrounds Trump. So that's the case that he's going to be making. So here's what I paid attention to last night. He is running on his handling of the COVID pandemic and pointing out that while other states and cities were shutting down schools and businesses, he kept schools and businesses open in Florida. And Florida basically had a better economic record through COVID. Okay, fine. But that is backward looking. And I'm not guessing that, the biggest thing that voters are going to be thinking about is how is the next president going to handle the next COVID pandemic? Because, we may not have another one. And then the other thing is DeSantis really hits hard on what he calls the woke mob and woke ideology. And I've been paying a lot of attention to this. This gets into his battle with the Walt Disney Company. There's just not a lot of evidence that many voters actually care about this issue. It is a kind of a hot button thing among the Republican base, but not among anybody else. And there are even some polls that show that, first of all, people don't even know what wokeism is. But among people who think about it, there are some polls that show people consider it more of a positive thing than a negative thing. So that's the battle that I think DeSantis is facing. I will just sum up by saying this. DeSantis is not a clown. Despite the horrible beginning to his campaign here, he's a very smart guy, and nobody should dismiss him on that regard. He could end up being formidable if he can get some traction against Trump.
Well, it's very, very early days still. So we'll see, and we'll see if he gets more chances to make his case on Twitter, and if Twitter gets more chances to make its case that it is, well, viable as a streaming platform. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your perspective. I'm sure we'll be having more conversations like this. Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman and Dan Howley.